All right, so let's start off with the basics, huh? Wheat. I guess I should stand on the side of the tree. So here we go. Nice dry wheat. At this stage in the game, the seed is fully developed. What you could do is if you were to just take a head after it's dried down, if you take it and just mash it in your hand and blow, there's the seed.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
And I mean, and it is. You can see there are some shrivels in there. But the nice thing about me doing it like that is the likelihood of me breaking seed is pretty small. That's really a great way to thrash wheat if you're going to plant it, because I can't damage it. I mean, it doesn't matter how hard I, beat across it. I'm not going to do it. But I mean, if you look at that seed, and I'll let you guys pass that around, it's actually in pretty decent size and shape. They harvested this when it was still green. Do the same thing. That's what happens if I harvest it early.
Oh, okay. You barely see them.
You see that?
You barely see them, yeah.
And see how they're all shriveled? So they started to develop, but they didn't have enough time to finish. And so if you compare that to this,
so you're waiting to get to like that.
I really want it to be fully developed. Yep.
Now, question: if you put this, if you put this in a, like in a bag, like the one that is covering the, how you call those bags? Mesh bags.
The mesh bags?
The mesh bag. Yeah. And you use a stick and you just beat it. It will not harm the.
Nope, not at all. No, and actually, I mean, that is, if I was harvesting it and I didn't have a machine, if I had a bundle like this, that's exactly what I'd do. Paper, anything that I could put on the ground, if I were to hit it on the ground, those seeds would release. I mean, here. Just squish it. There it is.
Oh, this is good.
See? Real easy. I mean, it comes out without any problem at all. And then here, compare that to that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
It's huge.
If I'm going to plant it, that's what I want. These, technically, are alive. But would they grow? Hard to say. And will they grow well? Probably not. Probably be pretty slow growing, actually. And so we really want to go after that size. And so here's where then, if I had a screen, so here's the seed screens. Now I have a whole bunch of different size screens. This is a 6/64 by 3/4. This is a 9/64 by 3/4. And you can see the difference, size-wise. They're very different. But the concept is, if you were to pour that one on top of there, everything's going to fall through. If I were to do the same thing on that one, nothing's going to fall through. But so if I had the right screen, I could actually sort out the ones that are bigger from the ones that are smaller. And that's kind of what we're looking for, right? Because what did we say? The larger the seed, the better it's going to germ. Yeah. It's not always true, but it's one of those things that, if you have very little things that you can tweak, man, if you can go after something bigger, it tends to grow a little bit faster. And for an environment like Afghanistan, that little bit might be all we need to make all the difference in the world. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking for. Let's talk about germination for a second. So what I did is a couple days ago, I went ahead and set up. These are different ages. So this is 6 days ago, 5, 4, 3, and 2 days ago of when they were planted. You can see what happens is that 6 days ago,
almost all of them. Oh wow! Yeah.
You know,
That's spot on.
it's gotten a really good growth. What you're looking at here is the green. Here, I'll pass that around. You guys take a look at it. The green, what you see is the shoot that's going to come up out of the ground. Down below, we see the roots. Okay, and if you look at it really closely, I mean, there's a fair amount of root mass. The seed is still present. Now, one thing about a seed at this point in time is once the seed has germinated like this, it really is basically done. You can't take this and then plant it. And the reason for it is if I were to take this and break off when I pull it out, if I break off a root, for instance, or if I break off that shoot, that seed now does not have the ability to regrow those. So they're lost forever. Yeah. And so it is kind of a test that is a destructive test. You know, once I do it, I'm done. I can't do anything. However, something like this, still fine for my animals. So if you have it, don't tell them just to throw it away. They can, in fact, if they wanted to, they could eat it, or their animals could eat it. Okay, and that's totally fine. But so that's what it's going to look like. But let's talk about the paper towel test. So like I told you guys yesterday, you can really simply do a paper towel test. And the idea is if you get a paper towel, get it a little bit wet, I roll it up. One of the things that I am very cautious about is that when I set up my paper towel test, I always put on a certain number of seeds. And I know how many seeds I put on, because if I know how many I put on, I can count the number that have germinated. So let's see, I set this up on Sunday night, I think, yeah. So if I carefully unroll this, so out of the 5 that I planted, 1, 2, 3, 4 have germinated well. And that one technically has. You see that little end? It's just starting. Okay. But at this point in time,
so I give you 97%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pretty good stuff, isn't it? But I would hope it would be. We paid good money for that seed. So, I mean, it germinated well. And like I said, at this point in time, it is a destructive test. However, it is totally edible for humans. And in fact, if you were to eat it at this stage, it has a little bit of a sweetness to it. If you were to bite a straight seed, it would have absolutely no sweetness to it. But if you bite into it like now, it actually has a little bit of sugar. And the reason for it is that what the seed stores is starch. What the seed needs to grow is sugar. So it takes that starch, converts it into sugar. That's what we taste when we bite into it.
Well, actually, we have something that's kind of traditional food or cuisine. They would just moist the wheat seed and let it grow a little bit and then crush it.
Oh.
And then they eat it.
Yeah, and so that
it's called samanek.
It would give you the same exact thing.
Samanek. Yeah, it's very
sugar?
Famous in northern Afghanistan, in Kabul. Yeah.
Well, you just put it on, like on water, almost in water. So
yeah, almost in water. Yeah,
yeah.
It grows like the shoot comes, and then
Is that sugar?
crush it.
Get that little sweetness to it.
It's like a little piece of corn.
Yeah. It's like you're eating sweet corn at that point in time.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There is a fire. There's something going on over there. There's a bunch of fire trucks that took off a little while ago. All right, so we know what our seed is, and so let's talk for a second about our land prep. And it's not great, but if you guys want, you can kind of walk around. You can see that there's some places that have a little bit of give to it. It's actually not bad. In fact, this soil over here has been fairly well amended and has pretty good organic matter, but it's also very sandy. And so one of the things that we talked about was making sure that you had a really good area to plant in. And I said, there's a couple great devices that you can use. One of my favorites on heavier soils is just a plain chain link fence. On this soil, it doesn't work as well because it's fairly light, so it doesn't really grab. So what you can do with something like this is if you were to take a chain link fence and put a little bit of weight on it, and what seems to work really well here in Fresno at least, is that if I put that chain on there. I can really smooth things off, you know, and you can see that seed bed nice and smooth now. Now it still might be a little bit, you know, soft. If I needed to, I can crunch it down a little bit. And me and a friend actually came up with this. This is one of those classic days we're sitting around in the shop, and I'm trying to come up with a simple tool that would do everything. And I'm sitting there and I look over on the shelf. We had an old piece of oil field pipe. It was this long. And I sat there and I looked at it, and sitting next to it, there was a steel rod. And next to that was an old piece of chain. And I said, you know what, I think I could build a pretty cool little device. And so what we did is we took that oil field pipe, ran the rod through the middle, welded 2 caps on it, just tack welded it, took the old chain, cut it into 3 equal lengths, welded them on to each side on a little tiny turn, little shift. You can see it kind of wraps, and we left the chain loose so that as it went, it would kind of beat. And what was great about it was that what it ends up doing is it compacts a little bit. And as it compacts, the other thing that I really liked about it is if you look really close, you can see those ridges. And those ridges are actually awesome for a couple different reasons. Number one is that if this is an irrigated field, okay, and let's say I'm going to add water from up there, and what happens? So I'm going to add water, so I start pumping water into the top side of this field. And what happens to the water?
Goes to the lowest point.
Goes to the lowest point, right? And how quickly does it go?
Depends on the volume.
Depends on the volume, but for the most part, it's just going to kind of run straight across. Now, I'm going to be an Afghan farmer, and I'm going to plant. And when I plant, I'm going to plant it by hand. All right? So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to throw it out across here. And I'm going to add water on this side. And what's going to happen to my seed? It's all going to go down there. Those little ridges, as it turns out, if they are done correctly, when the water comes, it'll hit those ridges and the water will kind of get broken, and it'll just kind of ripple effect down, hopefully holding the seed into the bottom and allowing the water to go across the top. Okay. I got this idea watching the rice growers in California. So when we plant rice up in Northern California, they do it by airplane. But what they found they do is that before they start laying in, they go through and they put little ridges, and then they drop it. And what happens is when the seed hits, it kind of settles into the bottom, and then when the water goes across, it keeps it where it was. And it's amazing. I mean, the seed sits, and I started to think about it, and I'm like, you know what? That little device would do the same thing if I were to use an irrigated land. Here's the other thing. If I don't use irrigated, okay? So, if I'm going to plant, right, I am going to sprinkle seed across the top. I had a student individually paint each one of these, just so you know. It's kind of slave labor, I believe.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. So if I were to add seed, where's the seed end up? Right on top, right? Okay. Now let's think about this. If I have seed on top, what's going to happen to that seed? It's going to wash out if I'm irrigating it. What else could happen to it? Rodents can get it. What's my seed soil contact like? Poor, right? Sitting on top. So here, I've gone through, I've created my ridges, I've added my seed. What happens now? If I were to take something like this, get off it. and pull across, what happens to my seed?
He's tucked
Spread,
in a
it'll
little bit.
definitely spread out.
Spreads out,
More soil contact.
more soil contact,
Yeah.
kind of buries it a little bit,
Yeah.
keeps it out of the way of the birds. I think that's a fantastic idea. In fact, the reason why I use a chain link fence back home is that I pull it behind my planter because it throws a little bit of dirt on top, presses it down, spreads it out, keeps the birds away. And then if I were to use this, even if I were to irrigate, that little bit of soil is going to keep it. In this case, might not have wanted to use the chain. The chain actually might have a little too much bulldozering effect depending on the soil type. So I'd have to give that a shot. All right. Okay, last bit for you. Let's talk about planting. So the question was asked, how much seed do we plant per acre? And the minimum they recommend is about 125 kilograms per hectare. Okay, how much is 125 kilograms per hectare? Well, it's about 12.5 grams per meter squared. You guys are all going to go, what the hell? 12.5 grams per meter squared. Okay, well, follow me here. What's a meter square? One step forward,
One step to the side.
one step to the side.
back.
That's 1 meter, right? Okay, 12.5 grams. Well, this one's going to take a little bit of effort, but I think you guys are all smart enough. A student of mine and I, we started thinking about that. And we said, well, if we're going to plant by hand, how much does our hand hold?
12.5 grams.
Well, unfortunately, it holds a little bit more than that. But what we did find out is it's very consistent. And so what we did is we took a bag and we put our hand in, we brought it out, and then we kind of shook it before we took it out. Once we shook it enough time, we then took it, flipped it upside down, shook it again, saw if any seed fell out. Because what we figured is that we needed to be able to hold it before we could broadcast it. If it's falling out, I'm not really holding it. So we're holding it, we go to a scale, we drop it on, and we find out how much seed we can actually hold. For me, I could hold somewhere between 33 and 35 grams of seed. So I did it about 10 times, and that's what it averaged out to, is about 33 to 35 grams. That's how much I could easily hold. So if I'm just going to reach in, grab. Well, so if I know that I can hold 33 grams of seed, and I know that I'm supposed to plant 12.5 grams per meter squared, how much area can I plant per handful?
3.
Yeah, well, about 2.5,
Yeah.
right?
Less than 3, yeah.
So now all of a sudden I calibrate myself. Okay, well, let's add on top of that. If my germination percentage is 50% and I can hold 33 grams, how much area can I plant? Only one. So now all of a sudden I know how much seed I need to add to get a perfect amount of seed. And here's the key to all this, is the fact that if they plant the amount that can potentially be their maximum yield, okay, then what they are going to use is the right amount of seed. And what you have to remember here is the seed that they plant is the seed that they're taking off of their family's plate. So what we want to make sure is that they take no more than they need to be successful. Because it feeds them this year. And then if they are successful, it feeds them next year. Right? And so I don't think it's overly complex to figure out. You know, I mean, I think you could go and get a real simple scale, right? And just figure out how much does your hand hold. And you could calibrate yourself pretty easily. And I think there's a lot of value to that, because I think anything that we can do to make them more efficient, and I think even small changes can go a long way, you know, a long way. So, any questions?
We're going to start over here. I always kind of start us in here, so we can avoid the light out there and the heat for a little bit. We'll be going out and doing a little bit of planning and things, but I want to kind of start off on a couple of simple little things that we can kind of think about in vegetable production. You saw my presentation this morning. You guys got any other further questions before I kind of get started?
Go into it.
Just go into it.
Yeah.
Well, most vegetables are what we call seed propagated. So we take a seed, we plant it, the plant comes up and it develops into whatever we have here. But a lot of times we do not directly seed those plants out into the field. So we start them off as what we call transplants. And transplants have a lot of issues with soil mix and everything. Here in the United States, we use sterilized soil mix to kind of start all of our transplants off. But in countries where they don't have the availability of soil mix, and soil mix is quite expensive. It comes in 50-pound bags and runs anywhere from $30 to $70 for a large bag to fill up a few trays. Like potting soil is what I'm talking about. Yeah, and you can kind of see this is what the typical mix would look like. You have a little bit of peat, you have perlite and vermiculite, which are mine, to kind of add, but it's really what we call a soilless mix. It doesn't have soil in there. And I teach a home gardening class, and the main thing I tell my students is do not use soil from your garden and put it in a tray or grow a plant or anything, because you're bringing in disease potential and problems associated with that. So most of the transplants are grown in these trays, and we call them speedling trays, transplant trays, and you can grow anywhere from 72 to 228 or whatever the number is on some of these smaller ones. So most vegetables are going to be produced, even in developing countries, in a tray like this. But the issue becomes, at that point, what type of soil are we going to put in here? And most of the time, they're going to take soil from a field. They're going to fill it up with that soil, start their transplants in there. Tomato, pepper, cabbage, anything you can think of that you go to a market and see that would be a transplant quality. You know, we don't usually transplant sweet corn and beans and those sorts of things. Those are usually directly seeded. But some of the plants like tomato and pepper, you can't plant it out in the field because it doesn't produce an adequate stand. So you have to start them off as transplants. So if you started off in a tray like this and you don't have a soilless mix that's sterile, where there's no bacteria, there's no pathogenic fungi or any other type of organism, what do? So you have to go out to the field, like I was talking, and fill this up, and that becomes a real problem, because you're taking field soil, you're putting it in here, you're watering it all the time. It's in usually a closed location where it warms up. So you know, pathogenic organisms love moisture, they love heat, and they really are going to love those plants as they germinate and develop out of this tray. So what can we kind of do? We need to think about some way to possibly going through and sterilizing soil in some way to do this. And similar to what they do for drinking water in some locations. You've heard about this, right? Where they just kind of take water, they put them in bottles, put them out in the heat for a couple of days. It kills all the organisms in the bottle. And they do it a lot in Africa. And they have kind of fresh, not fresh, but sterilized drinking water that's been solarized by the heat of the sun, right? So we're going to do that same thing with soil. So I had this soil here, and I went out just before you guys got here and grabbed some field soil, and then added a little bit of moisture in here. You want to add a little bit of moisture because that provides the steam. So you're going to steam this soil by natural solar radiation, and that will kind of do the best job possible to kill all the organisms in here. You can pass it around. Just feel, it's just been out in the sun for a while. Feel how warm that is.
Leave it in the bag.
Just leave it in the bag for several days, and you may want to come back and add a little bit of water if you have to, but it really heats up really quick, and it creates a steam. You know, here, how we do our soil, if we were to use the soil in a mix, we use a steamer. and we take it up to about 160 degrees for about 24 hours, and that kills all the organisms in there. But you can kind of do this as a simple thing, and there's bags flying all over the place in Afghanistan that you can kind of use this. And a clear bag works the best because it heats the soil up to a higher temperature than even a black. So that clear allows the light to go in a lot more. The black kind of blocks some of it out. But if you can't find a clear bag like this, then you may want to use a black or whatever is available to work. No, it doesn't. It's all about the light that kind of comes in, and it can't get out. So a clear bag, it's kind of interesting. I would have thought the same thing, but if you grow plants on mulch out in the field, for example, clear heats up 10 to 15 degrees more than black mulch does. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
So how long does it need to stay in the bag?
it needs to stay in here for several days.
Okay.
And like I was saying, if it kind of dries out a little bit, it shouldn't, because most of the moisture should stay in the bag if you tie it up. But if there's a hole or something in it, in the bag, you may want to just come back and check it after a day or two and add a little bit more water in there, because the water is really what's sterilizing the soil. It's the steam that's being created that's sterilizing the soil here, and we want to kind of do that. And I've been in some of the greenhouses in Afghanistan, and they grow them in trays like this, and I've seen them against the wall where all the plants are actually dead. All the plants, maybe one or two surviving, but it's due to those organisms that are in that field soil that kind of kill those developing seedlings. And for example, this is what it would kind of look like. We're going to take some of these and plant them out. These just didn't get watered, so this is why you have all the dead material here. But we're going to take some of these peppers out and plant them for the next group to come in and see, like we did with the cherry tomatoes last time that you guys saw out there. And so you can see how the plants were normally grown. All these are not the highest quality plants that we'll go through. And when you choose out the plants, choose the ones that are green and have a little bit of green at the top when we go over there and plant these. But I wanted you to kind of understand that a lot of the vegetables are not directly seeded, but a lot of them are transplanted. And they transplant them because they can germinate the seed in a greenhouse situation, in a tray, keep them watered. Out in the field, you just don't get the germination, and you don't get the stand that you would if you did it this way. So that's why you always see tomatoes, right? You ever planted a tomato plant? You've never actually seeded a tomato plant in a garden, right?
Yeah.
You always get a transplant and plant it in. You always get a pepper, a bell pepper, a hot pepper, whatever. You always get a transplant. You plant it out into the field. You always get an eggplant. Eggplant is always transplanted out there as well. You can seed cucumbers and things of that sort, some of the cucurbits, but generally, if you're trying to hit a market early, a lot of those will also be seeded into trays to get a head start on the growing season. So if you take a plant and plant it right after the last frost date in the spring, you can get a 2-week jump on the growing season and get that to market that much quicker. So that's why a lot of these are actually done that way. A couple other things here. We talked a little bit about the brassicas and spinach and some other things. We're going to see a little bit of that out in the field, but brassicas are normally started. This is a brassica here, and these are also normally started out in the a tray and then transplanted out into the field most of the time. The spinach is starting to grow. We have some cauliflower here that's starting to develop as well. But you can see when we do this in a developed country, we're able to have a sterilized soil mix of some type, or this is a soilless mix. But in other countries, we have to have a way to get something that's sterile to allow those plants to grow properly. And we're not going to be able to see this. Everyone knows what this plant is, right? Potato. Potato. And if you dig down under here, you can kind of see that the potatoes kind of come off of the stolons there underneath. So you can reach down in here. You can see there's a couple more that are in here. So potatoes are produced underground, right? This is actually what we call a tuber. It's not a root. This is actually a tuber. This is really a modified stem. Think of a stem. This is a stem on a plant. This is really a modified stem because if you cut this, this is actually stem tissue, because this is actually going to grow up into, develop into a new plant. And on potatoes, for those of you who don't know, this would probably produce 4 or 5 plants. So you'd come in, you'd quarter it up a little bit, and when you plant it, you always want to make sure that it has what we call an eye. Everybody heard of a potato eye, right? You always want to make sure that there's one potato eye on that, what we call a seed piece, when it goes out into the field to be planted. And potatoes are normally planted a couple of times, early spring and in the fall. And most in Afghanistan, it's going to be in the fall. But here, or in the United States, it can go at 2 different times, but it can't take the heat of the summer. If somebody would be able to get potatoes to grow effectively during the summer months and fill in a stand, you can plant potatoes, and a lot of times they just won't come up in the heat and they'll just melt. If there's a way to actually do that, you can make a lot of money off of it. But potatoes are normally grown in the cool part of the year, right? Cool season crop, even though it's very closely related to pepper, very closely related to tomato, we have to grow it at the coolest time of the year. Where most of the potatoes in the United States grown? Idaho, in the mountains, in Colorado, in Maine, in Wisconsin. That's where most of the potato production is, and it's grown as what they call a summer crop, because they have fairly cool summers to be able to kind of get the stand for all those potatoes. So same way I talked about today and showed you that FAO map of Afghanistan with all where the vegetables are produced. In the mountainous areas, potatoes in the mountains. They just do very well in the cool production areas. Now, I have a couple other things here I want to kind of talk about. If I can bend down and grab this. This was brought to me by our student worker over here. These are some hot chili peppers, and this is prized in some of the countries that surround Afghanistan and even in Afghanistan. So a lot of spicy food in Pakistan and India, they want a lot of these peppers. Very easy to produce and to dry down in a dry climate. Even when I was there, Naveed, a few years ago, they were trying to dry down tomatoes and ship them to Turkey, because they had such a market there, and a lot of those are then going into Europe. But you've seen peppers dried out, and it's a very easy way to take a vegetable crop and get a higher value, what we call added value to that. So a pepper that you would just sell at a market, you'd be able to take this pepper and get 2 to 3 times the price for something that's been dried, and it lasts a lot longer in that type of climate. A fresh pepper is going to be gone in 2 weeks. This will last for many months to even a year. Yeah. All right, now. Yeah.
Say something about seedlings. Actually, in some parts of Afghanistan, mainly in eastern part, women are working, and USAID or similar organizations build some small greenhouses where they produce these kind of seedlings and they sell them to farmers. So this will be an opportunity for you guys, especially women, to work with women. And a greenhouse can be built with little amount of money, but it will be a sustainable enterprise for them. They'll produce and supply it to farmers, and that will be a source of income. It will be a good intervention.
And a lot of those small greenhouses are going up
Yeah.
all over Afghanistan. Even when I was there a few years ago, just a small hoop structure.
Yeah.
It's not what we think of a greenhouse. It's just a small hoop structure with plastic over top of it. So it's very simple, where they can make a little bit of money off of it and sell transplants in that form. And if any way possible, try to sterilize the soil in some way. And you've probably seen them too, when you've seen the trays and they're just, all the plants die.
Yeah, exactly. And the good thing about Afghanistan is now that you can buy these trays. I had this little cucumber research projects where I just went and I bought these trays. And in some parts you can also buy the soil. But if you can't buy it, then sterilize it. Simply, plenty of sunshine.
Plenty of sunshine. And it's a simple way to kind of get out of that disease-causing organisms that are in the soil that's going to kind of kill a lot of your developing plants there. So now we're going to kind of move over and go over to our next stop. We're going to go out and see some vegetables, and then we're going to do a little bit of planting. Okay? And we're going to kind of just go right back where you guys were. I'm going to grab a few of these.
Need some help?
Now we have to go out in the sun for the next 30 minutes. I'll let you guys take that for a while. We're going to kind of point out a few things here. So is everyone kind of familiar with what most vegetable crops kind of look like? What a tomato plant looks like, what a watermelon plant looks like, what a pumpkin plant looks like. So I just wanted to kind of, we'll go down over here and kind of start, and I'll get inside here a little bit. Cucurbits. We talked about cucurbits or vine crops today. Watermelon would be considered one of those cucurbits. Pumpkins would be in another group, which is the cucurbit group. And this is actually, the scientific name is Citrullus, but it is also, even though it's in a different group or in what we call a genus, it's still in the same family. So any vine crop that kind of spreads out, cucumbers, melons, pumpkins, squash, watermelon, are all in that group. Now remember today, I talked about that group having male and female flowers on one plant, right? If I can bend down here with all this stuff I got. This is watermelon, and this is a male flower that opened today. If I were to take this off, I got more. Yeah, I got more. So if I were to take this one off and open it up here, unless the bees have already taken all the pollen off of it, usually you can rub it right here and you can kind of see they've already took it, but a lot of times you can just kind of rub it on there and you can see the pollen there on your knuckle. This flowered yesterday. Another male flower. Usually on most cucurbits you get a lot of male flower production and then you start to get female flowers. So on a male flower you can tell it doesn't have that small cucurbit type fruit attached to it. If I can find one here, I'll try to grab one of those for you. But that's a male flower.
That's one over there. Maybe a female over there.
That's still a
right
male.
In front of you. Right there. Where you touch.
This one?
Nah. Right there. That's a flower.
Yeah, that's another male.
Alright.
You see that?
Oh yeah.
See how it has that small, like cucurbit fruit
Yep.
attached to it? That's a female flower. And when it opens up, the pollen has to be deposited on what we call the stigma. So in this flower, in the female flower, we have a stigma, a style. The pollen tube grows down through the style, and this is the ovary. The ovary is where all the seeds are produced. So we have a stigma, style, and ovary. Pollen lands on the stigma, grows down to where the ovule is, pollinates the ovule. We get the sexual fusion, and then we get seed production. developing.
Or the
But-
fruit. That's the,
Yeah, but if this flowers and there's no male flowers open, this flower is just going to abort. It's not going to develop at all because there's no pollen here that's kind of growing down to kind of fuse with those ovules to get that seed to produce. You know, so you have to have male and female, what we call gametes, you know, to fuse, and then they form a seed.
And that's why you come and do a artificial insemination.
Yeah. in a way, yeah. But I think it's important. You know, this was like a small watermelon, right? If you kind of pass it around and look at that, it looks like a small watermelon. If it's a cucumber, that female flower looks like a small cucumber. If it's a squash or a pumpkin, it looks like a squash or a pumpkin. But the important thing on this is to remember that it has to have bee activity, and you have to have pollen out there to pollinate that. So bees are important. And you're going to see bees over here, but bee activity is very important in most vegetable crops. I think they said a third of the world's crops rely on bees for pollen transfer to make that fruit set. Most fruits, most vegetables that produce a fruit all rely on insects in most cases to kind of move that pollen from one place to another. We have a couple other plants over. You can see some of the broccoli that's starting to kind of bolt over here, straight across. There's a few cabbage plants over there. The other stuff there, some peas, and then here we have some mustard. On down there's some peppers, and we're going to just kind of, and cucumbers. This is a cucumber plant. There are not very many of them here, but there's a couple of cucumber plants that are starting to develop. So kind of getting your idea what all these different vegetables look like, because you're going to see a lot of different things. It's just not like a wheat plant. You look at one wheat plant, you know what it is, but there's so much variation in vegetables. You kind of have to have a little bit of a savvy ID ability when you're kind of walking in to kind of be able to know exactly what we're dealing with.
on the broccoli there, do you have to take those shoots off there at all, or they just let them go?
Well, this time of the year, broccoli's done. It's too hot.
Oh, okay.
It's too hot. So that's what we call bolting, where it just goes straight up. Usually it should be in a head like this.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
And you see the one over there to the left.
Yeah.
That is kind of breaking apart. That head's kind of breaking apart. And actually a lot of Asians will still eat a lot of those yellow flowers in mixes and things and stir fries. But for us, it's gone. The market in broccoli, you want that tight bead, what we call a bead,
Right.
and you don't want it to kind of break apart at all. Yeah,
You said this is one is mustard.
that's mustard. Yep. You can even taste it if you want it. You want to taste a little bit of spicy mustard? Yeah. And this is really close to what you would see in like a orchard situation. This little bit right here in Afghanistan. Very similar. And I'll pull out some of these. We'll do some peppers. What do you want? Let's put the tomatoes on the ridges and put the peppers down in the basin. Okay.
So these were irrigated yesterday, so they should be okay. And we can.
The tomatoes, yeah, they probably need a little bit of water on them.
Okay.
So I'll get a trowel. Yeah, get a total of
You
about
want them
8.
on the edges, right, or you're in the middle?
Yeah, we'll put them right in the center.
Yeah.
See, you know, usually in Afghanistan, this bed would be going from here to where she's standing. So usually you'd plant them on the outside, and you'd have, this wouldn't actually be, that furrow would not be there, and that would usually be the walking area. So you just kind of pull them apart here, and you always want to kind of loosen everything up a little bit. Pull it apart like this. This keeps the roots moving. A lot of times if they're in containers and you don't kind of break up the root ball, they'll just kind of keep going around and around and around and not really, you just kind of want to break them up a little bit.
That's why a fork's very good, just for getting those roots loose and putting it in, yeah.
And then we'll kind of put a little bit of water right there to kind of soak it in, and then just kind of cover it up like that right there. And we'll put one here and one there.
I need water. Does somebody else want to do this? That one.
Whoa.
Thank you.
One more right here.
Shaking the boots, boss. We have one.
You got that one?
And usually tomatoes are planted about 2 feet apart, but we'll go. Yeah, with the stem. Yeah. Well, they do that a lot in greenhouses. You know, they'll bring the plants down and they'll lay them down on the floor. And greenhouse tomatoes. You've probably seen that. They do that a lot in the UK.
I was putting the worm.
One's here. That one right there.
So we'll just plant these in a couple of rows over here in the basin.
Again, the same applies to loosening the roots a bit?
Yeah, try to loosen them up just a little bit. Just they can take it.
They can take it, okay.
They can take it.
Okay.
You can bury it deep.
Yeah, you can bury these a little deeper.
What are these?
Come back a year from now.
A foot and a half or so.
Put them off the top.
Yeah, 2 rows.
Wow, does anybody know anything about bees?
And they sting you.
Sting and they make honey.
If you annoy them.
If you ignore them, yeah.
Annoy them, yeah.
Well, that's what they'll do. This is a branch off of an oak tree about 20 feet up in the air that fell off into the rodeo grounds down Layton to south of here. So that's a pretty big tree. But that's what they'll do. The combs will be vertical in there like that. And
Is that a honeybee?
yeah, there's honeybees.
So they combed it out itself, or was it like something stricken by lightning or something like that, caused a cavity to open up or something?
I don't know what opened the cavity originally, whether it was rot or squirrels or everything combined, you know. But that was in a big branch that was...
Oh, it's a branch. That's a big tree.
Yeah, that's a branch about 20 feet up in the air.
Wow.
Good thing there was no cowboys underneath it. Huh? But, yeah, so I let the bees live in there, and then after they died, I cut it open and make little tables out of that. Out of those things. Usually they're kept in boxes like these. You need one of these things, like those. If anybody want to look through the beehives, we can go through them towards the end here. And get a sting or two if you want. Or even if you don't want, you might get one anyway. But
so, like overall, you know, the bees production is very big over there. You know, they do use honey, you know, as part of the sweetening, and then you know they can be a commercial or the cash crop as a bees. And then you learn about the vegetable crops already. You know, majority of those vegetables require pollinators, and bees are one of the major pollinators. You know, in order to have more fruit per tree or you know per plant. Tomato, pepper, melons. You know, they require the bees to pollinate, so then the fruit can generate. So then you know, like if they have some issue of having flowers, having a good plant or a good crop, but they don't have a fruit. That would be one area that you can look into whether they have a good pollinators in the area, you know, whether they have the habitat that attract bees or other pollinators.
What's the distance you have to have? Let's just say I have a farm like 6-7 miles away from here, and there's no bees around, but there's a guy 7 miles away that has some bees. Will the bees travel that far, or what's the distance? How far do you have to have bees to?
after 5 miles, they lose their wings, wear out too soon, and you know, they'll fly that far if it's straight across the desert to get to a source or something, but they're going to look around it. Up to 5 miles in any direction.
So they do like half radius, and then you know, like if you're familiar with what
going
California,
than that, they just wear out too fast. Their wings. That's how they get thrown out of the hive.
Like for example, you know, commercial almond in California, you know, we would have this need for the beehive, you know, the beginning of spring, because everyone want to pollinate their almond trees to get that high crop production. So that's why it can run out, you know, I think now up to $200
$200 a hive.
A hive, you know.
Oh, so you bring them in?
Yeah.
From all across the country.
You bring a hive in,
And like you said, man, you know, because everybody want them at the same time. Sometimes they come from the Midwest. You
Oh, they come from
Yeah.
Florida,
hives
New
coming in
York,
from
everywhere,
Kansas
Texas.
all the way to California just for a rental in the orchard for a few weeks.
It's 200 a day.
No, 200 of them
A
for the
box
season.
for the whole
Oh,
season.
season.
Yeah. Well, just
bloom period.
the
There's
whole
a-
bloom period. So then like they have different bloom from south to north. Because of the warm
Yeah.
weather.
Goes north, but there's 3 different variety bloom periods actually.
So for an acre of almond trees, how many bees would you have to? How many
Hive.
hives? Would
Depends
you
on how many days of flying time you get. If you got 1 hive per acre, you can get away with it if you get a lot of flying time. If you don't, you need maybe 4. How do you know what the weather's going to be? They can run. Everybody goes about 2 at least.
Yeah. So it's,
And the weather determines the flying time because when
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The weather's in February. It can be total fog or,
and they just won't come out.
Oh, well, if they can't see where the sun is, like on a cloudy day they can make it, because if they can see blue sky, they can navigate with their eyes. They can tell where the sun is, how long they're gone, and how to get back. But that's what they say. The BI doctors.
One of the guys mentioned to me in an earlier class that they're heading to the south of Afghanistan, and in some ways it's like our San Joaquin Valley, but a lot less vegetative growth. So the vegetation is very limited in the summertime there. How do you deal with bee cultivation when there's very limited, let's say, material for the bees to work with?
Move them.
Okay.
Find enough
they're
flowers.
probably not very mobile because a lot of folks are working with, let's say, women's groups that live within compounds. So I've heard there's some dieback in the summertime because the bees just don't have much to work with.
Give them protein and sugar.
Sugar, yeah. So sugar, kind of a sugar water solution, or
Yeah, you can make a simple syrup out of half and half and pray.
and then
A lot of prayer.
well, with white, the garden, if they have white flowers and any type of flowers that have nectar, that would maintain
so
the
there
bees.
would be some flowers probably in the home compound, so that would be good.
Yeah, that won't do very many hives though. Unless they got,
What's the life cycle of a hive? I mean, how long does it stay before it eventually just either dies off, or or do they just keep regenerating, or how does
the
that
queen
work?
will live several years. She's everybody's mom. She can have 50,000 or more kids running around the house. And
So this is the queen.
So
the workers are females too, but they don't get fertilized, and they're fed different their whole life. But they're infertile females, and
so once the queen dies, they go somewhere else, or the whole hive?
well, they'll raise another one.
Okay.
Queens come from the same egg as a worker bee. This is like a Sheeta worker bee, but the eggs you can see them down in the bottom of these cells. When they're in full production, you'll see the little eggs and then a little spot of jelly, or it gives kind of a blue shiny spot down in the bottom. And here's a sheet of pollen. They need pollen to raise babies, but they'll store it just like honey. And that's like what it is right here. That's their protein source. They need sugar and protein. They gotta have pollen to raise babies, or else they can get this jelly, royal jelly, that they feed the babies. Workers only get it for 3 days, but the queen gets it her whole life. And the bees can, force their glands if they're not getting enough protein to do it. They'll draw from their own body, and if hive conditions warrant it. But it takes 3 weeks from a fertilized egg to make a worker bee. They'll start out as a worm. As soon as the worm's big enough to fill the cell, they spin a cocoon and change to looking like a bee instead of a worm inside the cocoon. And the boys come from unfertilized eggs. They don't have a dad. Okay? Shakespeare had a word for that. And a queen will take 2 weeks. 2 weeks to raise a queen from a fertilized egg. Worker bees are 3 weeks, and the boys take 4 weeks. Around the combs, you'll see bigger cells towards the bottom. In the spring, they'll use that they'll be down there making heat. They need the heat in the early cool spring to raise more babies and warm up the hive.
Somebody told me that any female potentially can be the queen. How
Well, they can lay eggs. The other workers can lay eggs, but they never got fertilized. The queen gets fertilized first week or so after she hatches. She'll mate with up to a couple dozen drones and kills them.
Kills them.
Yeah.
It can only be with one.
Yeah.
Yes. I hope they volunteer for this.
Yeah. Here's a queen also, but that's how her abdomen's down in the hole, and her wings been clipped, and she's marked to make her easy to find. In a group like this, it's tough to spot her. Even on a comb like that, they'll be covering a comb with bees, two or three bees thick sometimes. But her abdomen's, she just puts her abdomen straight down in the hole and plants the egg right on the bottom. And
the most efficient way to store.
she can lay twice her body weight in eggs in a day. If you think one a month is bad. But so that's a couple thousand eggs a day. If she's got to be eating something pretty good, huh?
Now it's not working.
Oh yeah. Well, she's everybody's mom, and if they get the signals that the nectar and pollen are there and coming in, she's ready to go. The queen will live up to 5 years or so, depending on how much you move the hive around, and she gets knocked around, or the comb's removed, and if she's on this one and oops, sorry babe, I just wiped out mom, but so you got to be kind of careful. Yeah.
And worker bees, how long will they live?
The worker bees, their wings will wear out within about 6 weeks.
Wow.
And if they can't work, they just throw them out.
You don't want to be working with
There's no welfare in the beehive. And the guys get thrown out in the fall because there won't be any mating going on over the winter. So they just throw them out because all they do is eat. They don't go forage and bring back honey and pollen.
Top 5.
These cells are angled up a little from horizontal, about 12.5 degrees, according to some grad student somewhere. But the queen is raised vertically on her head. In a cell like this, you can see the amount of royal jelly that she has in there for her whole incubation period. And worker bees only get it for like the first 3 days. But and she'll hatch out a whole week earlier from the same egg. Any fertilized egg can become a queen just by eating superfood. It's not a commercial for Odwalla, but
So Bob, a lot of these folks are heading to Afghanistan at a time where probably they won't be starting, let's say, new bee-related projects, but probably just seeing how the ones that have already been started. Can you give them any kind of tips, maybe like through the seasons, what they should be looking for, let's say in the winter or spring or summer?
Be careful going through them too much.
We talk about it on the handout too, but then pretty much
the seasons are all covered.
Yeah, so it's covered on
the handout.
You can carve the keyword what to do. So mainly the temperature, because winter would be they're not as active, but then the summer make sure you have the water source, and that could be just dripping water, anything, because they have to keep themselves hydrated. So that's one thing, and then
they'll find water.
Yeah, the picture. I mean the thing that related to their crop yield, like bell pepper, chili, and tomato, to improve their yield, so they might have to look into maintain pollinators all year round. So like the area that they can grow garden, keep wildflowers or even wheat, you know, anything that flowering would attract pollinators.
But everybody's going to be home below 55 degrees. They lose their body heat and can't fly. You know, uh-oh.
And then, like, you know, we also list a couple of links that you can go read. You know, the E extension has a good, you know, chapter about bee biology and bee health.
Yeah, that's in your kit, so be sure to take a look at it. Especially for folks that may be dealing with females in Afghanistan, because the bee promotion has primarily been with women in compounds. So if they're having some issues, maybe there's some things you can look at, and then, as you say, you can reach back to others to help.
Is there anything that's that would, you know, foreign would come in that could kill off a beehive that we need to be, you know, aware of, like an insect that could take over and knock out a whole hive or something like that? Yeah,
they've identified 3 dozen kinds of not bacteria, viruses. 3 dozen viruses that are in them, and they get a bacterial disease, a small hive beetle, all kinds of.
What's the sign of that? I mean, what's, you know, they're all dead. I mean, obviously there's something.
Well, the bacteria. There's a couple kinds of bacterial rot that'll rot the worms, and there'll be like a little mud puddle in the bottom of the cell. If you're looking down in these cells, here you see the pollen, but you can, in the sunshine, get your combs out in the light where you can look down in there, and you'll see when we go through them out here. I'll show you some that you can see look down in and see the babies and stuff. And these will look like a little brown mud puddle in the bottom of the cells. Some of the cells will be, there's some, hand me this one over here. See, this area is capped. They're already large enough to have spun the cocoon. The outer ones, that's how the brood patterns usually are on those. They'll start in the center and go out as with each generation. And the caps will be open on some of these. And you can stick a little twig or a matchstick or something down in there. And if it's American foul brood, it'll string out like string cheese almost. And but it'll stink. It'll smell like both the foul broods. There's a European and American, and you'll notice it once if you ever find it. And that's almost, I don't know. Some guys use antibiotics and feed them out, but you can't get all the spores out. So when you stop doing the antibiotic treatment, they'll come back. They'll find it eventually and break down again. It's hard to, like to wipe out California and a lot of the country in the 50s, 50, 60 years ago. They spread it around good. But because bees will go in and they're really treacherous robbers and stuff. If there's a weak hive in here, there'll be bees from, they can tell by and there's nothing blooming, like you said, for 7 miles or so. Yeah, if they got a weak hive and everybody in all the other beehives in the neighborhood are starving and having a tough time.
Oh, so they're going to invade the other ones.
They're worse than people about looting and stealing and they'll just be right in there and come right in the door and go rob, loot, and pillage the whole hive. They'll kill them off. They'll see all kinds of. Well, there's a little debris around this, but when they're cutting off the caps and stealing the honey and stuff, it'll be all over the place. And you can see it on that one. You can right there where you're at, and these other ones where the comb's been eaten down. That's what happens when mice and rats get in the hive.
Oh, okay.
Like to eat them up. And they get a wax moth, a miller's bug, that will destroy the combs too. I just store them, stack them on end, and with they hold 9 combs in these boxes, standard boxes, but and let them ventilate. The wax moth can't take the fresh air and light. Here's some right here, a couple, but they can ruin a whole box in no time at all. Yeah.
Oh, to the peak.
Yeah, some out here you can see the trail. And
Oh, you dig it down right there.
just see.
When then the pesticides used, like the drift can also, impact the bee health. So they have to cap, like the way that they spray, if they, I think they start
That's
having
a
all
wax
this
moth
commercial available.
They're about that long, the bugs themselves, and kind of triangular. Huh? No, they're just. Yeah, they'll leave this cocoon trail through the. That's where the worm crawled, and then finally spun. Wax moth.
Oh, that's the moth itself?
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, that's what he's left.
Yeah, that's part of the cocoon.
Oh, and then when Bob said about the, the way you can have the hive, one thing to look into, if they don't have the wood available, it can be like some of the box that possible you can have a hive.
You can use a cardboard box.
Yeah, cardboard box, and then
shake them right out of a tray like this.
Yeah, you can have a wire to hang it. Create
a cluster in
the house for the bees.
Tree like that, you can just bang them right into a box or a box of combs like this. But you don't like it when they get trapped inside with you.
Probably not. You will see me running. Trust me.
So look like they carve active on one area. So if you kind of stand where it's not.
6 to 8 years ago. There's a couple pieces of wax here, but use the dry stuff and then drip some wax onto it maybe. Once you get the fire going.
I might put it out.
Looks like it's kind of flame-proof stuff here, huh?
What am I doing this for?
Imagine them go through my gloves.
No. You're fine. Stop worrying.
Good look for the mouth.
Oh, it's good.
Bushes or
Should I put some more in there?
yeah, go ahead and fill it up.
Yeah, fill it up all the way.
Yeah.
You want a good load
More
of.
fire.
You want plenty of ammunition.
Oh, you're smoking now.
Yeah.
Give me the lid.
There's it right there.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Keep.
Any picture? Somebody?
Come on up.
You won't be able to see from there. Right beside you with that here.
Okay. Well, use it to protect yourselves and these other guys.
All right, here we go.
Okay. This is where you don't want to stand. See the front door?
Yeah.
And the extra crack. There's an extra entrance there too. But you might want to give them a shot.
We're at
Hey,
the bottom?
we're here. Wait till we don't give them too much ahead. And you want to smoke them when you first tear the roof off the house.
Oh, wow.
Hey,
look at that.
just letting them know that you're there. You can put your lid down upside down to set your boxes off as you go through. You want to, you're out front here. That's pretty. Usually you don't want to block the entrance while you're molesting the hive. Okay, so they built extra. We've got. Let me give them some stuff. That's good. Don't give them too much. You don't want to.
Just enough.
Yeah, there's the pond. Loose and pollen, and you can see the blue jelly and stuff. Pass that around. Chop the
Está como
bees.
retrato aquí.
Need some more smoke? You good?
No.
You can see what's going on. Here's a queen cells, a couple bigger, the bigger cells.
They don't get mad when you do that?
Just get them off the business. You might want to start towards the outside of the hive if you're taking it apart, because the main action is going to be going on in the middle.
They have to do this every time when they harvest honey. They got to pull each one of these out.
No, you don't have to go all the way down. Honey's usually towards the top if you keep it right. You can see a lot of bigger cells on this one. Okay, babe? Okay.
How do you know when they need a little smoke? Just kind of see them agitate a little bit.
Yeah.
Besides them stinging.
Yeah. You'll notice. Keep just drifting across here every once in a while. All right, that one was totally empty on the outside. Here's honey.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
There's some honey in there.
Por si acaso.
Is that empty?
That might.
That was 15 pesos.
We're turning into pupa, turning from looking like a worm to looking like a bee inside the cocoons there. Let's see if we spot a queen. You guys want to hold this one?
Only one queen?
Yeah. There's a drone. The drones are bigger. See that guy there with the square butt?
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's a guy. He won't live back. On this one, yeah, you can look down into the cells, shine the sunlight down into the cells and look in it, and you can see the.
So what I'm going to show you guys here today, again, this is more awareness raising for you of some of the main economic crops that you would see probably in southern Afghanistan. So I'm going to start off with the first tree here. Anyone want to guess what these are?
Olives.
Olives. Very good. Olive trees. When in doubt, always look at the ground, I always say. So here's some dried olives. Don't eat them; they're pretty bitter. But olives, it's again one of those trees that is one of these low maintenance trees. It's in the category like pomegranate. It can live in saline soils. It doesn't need a lot of water. There aren't a lot of pests, and these trees live forever, literally. I mean, they live for thousands of years. There are trees in Jerusalem that are from Jesus' times. So they're still, they will survive for a long time. You can cut them back and they'll resprout. And so they're a very easy tree to grow. Excuse me.
They stay green through
Yeah,
winter?
they're evergreens. That's a good point.
Evergreen.
They do not lose their leaves. Gotta get some water. Hang on, guys. Okay, so again, olives, as I mentioned earlier, in the day, they were a part of the farm system of Afghanistan. During the Soviet times, as you heard, they were carpet bombed. A lot of them were destroyed. The Afghan government is attempting to rehabilitate some of those trees now. Excuse me. Excuse me. But again, they grow in the Nangarhar area, so they're probably not in RC South. Okay, any questions on the olives? Okay. Next tree. Anyone want to guess what these are? Plums.
These are
Orange. Apple.
orange.
Orange. Apple. It's not apple.
Walnut. Those are walnuts.
Yep, that's what I.
Yep. Walnuts are, again, a very easy crop to grow. One of these plant and harvest. They can take drought, hardly any pest or disease problems. In fact, in parts of Central Asia, they use the leaves as a desiccant, as a repellent for for moths oftentimes. You put them in your drawer, dresser drawers and stuff, and they'll repel moths and things. So it has some kind of allelopathic, it would be called, or some kind of way that the pests don't like it.
Now
So
how would they, I guess, just through climbing the trees to get them out, or
they climb the trees, or they simply drop to the ground. I mean, and they won't be spoiled. So they're green now. The husk will fall off, and then that classical brown outer covering of the nut that you're all familiar with will be seen, and then it will fall to the ground, and they can collect them that way. Now the reason I didn't mention this as a crop that's being supported by outside funds is that it takes a long time to grow these guys. Probably 7-8 years before you get your first crop. So given the mission there and timelines for Afghans, 7 years, 8 years, that's long for them.
We should have done it when we got down to
Yes, okay, exactly. So the walnut, but again, it'll be part of a home garden compound. Provides wonderful shade. The kids play in the trees. They can just put up a swing and stuff, and good tree. All right, so we're going to move down to the next trees here. Let's see if you can guess a little bit closer this time. These two trees here. Squash? No.
Squash.
Fig. Nope. Figs. You got it. Figs. Yep. Yeah, maybe you can pick that guy and we'll show them what it looks like. Most people in the U.S. are used to figs like in the cookies or fig Newtons. See, the birds always get a hold of them. But a fresh fig is absolutely wonderful.
They're delicious.
They are absolutely wonderful. And again, this is a low input crop, just like the olives, the walnuts, figs. They're very easy to grow. Again, kind of just these plant and harvest things. They get two sets of fruit, one in the late spring, early summer, and then another one in the fall. So they produce twice a year. And again, it's just part of their cuisine. So another home garden type tree. And yeah, so you'll see them around southern Afghanistan for sure. Any questions? Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to this to the next tree here.
What about, you said pruning and all that? You know, like the suckers and all that. When they're smaller, do you just let them grow and you keep knocking off the edges until they get? I mean, when you decide to let them branch out? Or?
Yeah, about to this height, and then you train them off to the side. So you let them grow up a little bit. Again, if it's in a super windy area, you probably even want it lower, and then you have the branches coming up, so that you keep the tree. But they're not heavily pruned.
Okay.
They're kind of, again, you let them just go. Yeah, here's a couple that have fallen down.
That's delicious.
Pistachios, correct. Pistachio. Another very important tree. Remember from this morning's discussion, it's one of the trees that's being promoted by the international community to help it's already in Afghanistan, of course, but just help them to rehabilitate. Now you may notice that these I guess 2 or 3 trees here, they have fruits on them, but this tree does not. Right? No nuts on it. What do you think happened with this one? Nope. No, they're all planted at the same time. It's a male. It's a male tree. For pistachio, you have to have males and females, which is like avocados and things. So you probably need about 1 male for about 10 females. Okay. So what's happened though with the rehabilitation of what's happened with the rehabilitation in Afghanistan is that they've kind of mixed stuff up, and they've put in a lot of orchards, but there's too many males in the orchards now, and so what can be done though is they can be grafted. You know the word grafted, where you can change the tree into the desirable characteristics you want. And so that tree then can become a fruit-bearing tree. Now, can you see this here, the difference in the bark?
Yeah.
This tree has been grafted. So what you have on the bottom are the desirable characteristics either for drought or pest and disease or whatever. And then the top growth is the desirable characteristics for the fruit. And so what we do is we cut the tree, and the outer edge is called the cambium layer, and that's where the food is. That's where the food runs up and down the tree. And so in the wintertime, when everything's dormant, you take a branch and you slice the cambium layer, and you can insert the branch into that bottom tree, and then it will grow up, and you get a new fruit that way. I have friends that have on one citrus tree 5 or 6 different citrus on one tree. So they'll have like tangerines, lemons, limes, grapefruits on just one citrus tree. So that's possible. Okay, so why do we spend a bit of time on this? Again, it could be an issue if you're in a pistachio growing area, and this actually was a question we got back from someone in ADAP. This exact thing is, I was in a pistachio growing region. They were wondering why so many of their trees were not producing. Sent some photos, and indeed there were just too many male trees in that area. So again, that was good reach back. We got a specialist from UC Davis to help that person with the techniques for changing the tree over. And community was very grateful, because you turn non-productive trees into productive ones, and then you got the right balance for the fertilization.
So in that case, you introduce a female, and some of the other trees turn into females, or what happened?
Yeah, well, what it is that in the desire to help the Afghans to get back to their pistachio growing with the trees, the international community provided a lot of trees. Good, very good effort, proper thing. But they didn't mark which ones were males and females when they did it. And so the Afghans got these trees, and they grew up, to a certain size, and they noticed that certain trees were not producing, and they didn't have the knowledge that, maybe that's a tree that's a male tree. They just thought it was unproductive. They didn't know. So again, the civil affairs person was able to report that back. A specialist in country looked at it and got it right, and it made a big difference for the community. It just it was a good, I guess, door opener for them, and that was just a heads up on the part of someone that took the course and saw that issue. Okay. Anything else on these trees here? Okay. Let's move. All right. Well, I hope you all can guess what these are, or I'm not sure if I'll issue a certificate or not. Apricots, right. So this is what a fully mature and very productive apricot tree would look like, properly managed. As you can see, the center is open, and so the fruits are on the outside, like I explained today, because it's very hard to work with the fruits when they're on the inside, and anyway, there's pest and disease buildup in there.
So you manage it this way, you make them...
Yeah, we make them go out.
Okay.
You can see all these trees tend to have 3 or 4 branches going out. These were purposely trained that way. And
clip them at the top?
Yeah, we also, because it's too high, you got to get a guy with a ladder to go up and down, and with labor costs, you don't need it. We just need to pretty much keep it down to almost where someone can just go along and pick. They may use a ladder, but there's no need for it to go really tall.
When you chop it off the top, you have to put, like you can buy that old stuff.
That's right. Yeah, some pruning paint or to heal it, so it does, because that opens it up for insects or disease. So yeah, you got to put some kind of pruning paint on it. But again, you can see by managing the tree growth how productive this can be. And this was even thinned out, and you can still see that's good spacing. Got a lot of.
Are these ready to be picked now, or are they?
Just probably, yeah.
Oh, they're really good.
Are they good?
On
Okay.
the floor,
Yeah.
The ones on the floor.
Again, check the ones on the floor.
Give me a better one.
Okay, I'm sorry. You can practice picking. Yeah, these need to come off pretty soon, because they're really apricots turn very quickly, so they'll be soft very soon.
Oh yeah. How many weeks you got there before you have to turn them into some sort of juice or whatever? Would you say 4 weeks, something like that? Or?
Probably quicker, because apricots really
go down.
decompose very quickly. That's why they're really hard. They're expensive in the market, for a couple of reasons. One, it's not the most popular fruit in America. People like them in dry fruits or breakfast cereals, but fresh fruit, for some reason, it doesn't catch on. But the post-harvest life is really short. So you got to pick these things, chill them down, and get them to the market right away, or they're mush. Compared to pomegranates or apples or something like that, they have a much better post-harvest life.
So the seeds just fell out, which means that's perfectly right.
Yeah, that's right. On the Afghan Ag, but again, as I said, it was just really a heads up for you, just to be aware of what they look like, because you're going to see these trees during your deployment. Okay, well again, I'm not going to issue a certificate unless you can figure out what these nuggets are. Pomegranates, okay, you got them. So this is a experimental way of growing pomegranate. For those that have been to Afghanistan before, you probably know the trees are really tall. As I mentioned in class, they don't manage them much. They don't like to prune them or remove the flowers. What we're trying to do, because of labor costs and shortage of land, is grow them in what we call hedgerow or avenue planting, where it's like one big massive green. And we're trying to keep them small, as you can see, so you can just go along and prune and harvest. And actually, a couple of guys that took the course thought this might be very interesting for Afghanistan, for the more switched-on growers, because it's a really a good way to really maximize the limited space you have on a farm. You can grow a lot of pomegranates in a small area here. So this morning, you remember I mentioned 4 things we do. We kind of start at the base and look for suckers. Okay, these have been cleaned out, so I don't see any here, but they would again be coming from the base of the tree and growing up, and again those are removed because they take away from the main fruits here. They take the energy away from the main objective of growing the pomegranate, which is to get good-sized fruits. I also mentioned in the wintertime about removing diseased or dead branches. This was done during the wintertime here, so the tree's in good shape. We don't have any pest and disease problems based on diseased branches or anything. Okay, since it is June, does anyone remember what the next step was in the process of improving the quality of the fruits? We talked about this morning.
Cut the ones off so that
That's
instead
right.
of having like 3 of them on here, you just take the one that's gonna produce. So you
Correct.
might get rid of those 2.
Probably yes. Yeah, that's right. So this is the time that you would thin the fruits out. And again, because so much fruit is coming on, it's really going to be a buyer's market. And these farmers have very few fruits, so they really got to produce the top quality of fruit to get the top price. It isn't a quantity game there, it's a quality game. So as you say, looking at these 3, which one do you think you would probably keep? Keep the big one, yeah. So I would remove this guy and probably him. We can look down some other ones here, but that's pretty much. Yeah, I think somebody came through. I think the students already came through and thinned these out, because I don't see many excess flowers on this. I was here a couple of weeks ago and there were a lot of flowers.
So is it good to have 2 on one stem?
Obviously, I don't know if they've.
I mean, ideally, you'd probably, they're going to start to butt up against each other and start to flatten out. So again, ideally, you'd probably want to remove that, because you're just imagine them getting the size of a softball, and they'll butt up against each other, and then you can get some disease in there because there's humidity that builds up between them.
Animals eat the small pieces of
Yeah. They, I'm sure the Afghans will figure out something to do with these. Yeah, you can see some of these. Look at this. This is really extraordinary. This is for middle of the June, or it's still kind of early June, to have this size fruit. It's going to be early mature. What else? And again, pomegranate, as I said, like the other fruits over there, they're easy to grow. They're not complicated. Very important in the culture. So again, just kind of a heads up for you on what pomegranates look like, and well, if you can do some good with pomegranates, that's very good, because it's such an important crop over there. Any questions on pomegranate?
When does it ripen?
Here we have early, mid, and late season varieties on the farm here, but around October. That's why you always see them around Halloween or Thanksgiving and stuff. Yeah, it's a later maturing crop than some of the others. So.
But you think this is going to mature earlier than that?
Yeah, this year I do, because if it's this size already, I'd say maybe by September they'll be ready. Yeah, yeah, they're really they're coming along very, very quickly here. Yeah, interesting. Any questions for you guys?
What about the irrigation there?
Oh, the irrigation. Yeah, this is what we're called drip. Again, it makes sense, but in Afghanistan it's still a bit early, unless the guy again is very switched on and has his own, like Dig mentioned, his own pumping system and filtration. But that's the drip. Drip is the most efficient, especially for southern Afghanistan. But for a host of reasons, don't promote it, because you'll get it's going to be tough. A lot of groups have tried it, and it just winds up in the back of the guy's shed. It doesn't work. But yeah, that's the drip. And the reason we have it off the surface is because rodents, they always are looking for water, so they'll chew through the lines if they think there's water in there, or coyotes will chew it. So we try to keep it a little bit above the surface. Ideally, you want it on the ground because you want the water as close to the ground as possible. You don't want to lose it to the atmosphere. But yeah, that's the drip.
These trees we watered in the morning.
They're on a time. I guess they're watered a couple of times a week. I don't exactly know the irrigation schedule for these.